Christmas? Jaihu's Trip to the Future. This book is not an official Disney Star Wars franchise tale. Oh, wait, let me just send a quick reminder. Let me just send one more. Nope, I'm gonna skip that. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to do a selected reading here, 2 chapters from the book. Chapter 1. School's no fun! We find ourselves... This is already a problem. We find ourselves at the New York University, Yale, Harvard, Baby College. Footnote. Proud to be a McDonald's Brainiac Playpen play place. Shaping the future for play, for every race. An institution for high-achieving smarties, specials, and math rock brainiacs. These are the people who will undoubtedly shape the world of tomorrow. The anointed few who, once they finally outgrow their designated cuddle and kiss fellatio gynoid turbo spaces, are going to define the next generation of success. This is success and prestige. This is lush. Okay? It's a bit like wearing a gold Rolex around your brain. And if you can afford the $200,000 per year tuition, adjusted for inflation and cryptocurrency adoption, it is highly recommended. The major degrees on campus are Labi and PhysX, sponsored by NVIDIA, Let's Play, Earth Pseudoscience, and Sex Worker Tort Law. Footnote, if this doesn't pique your interest, NYU Yale HBC also boasts respectful dumpster archaeology, careful not to desecrate any hobo burial grounds, coital android engineering and field testing, feline zoology for asteroid spinsters, quantum furry dentistry, tantric machine learning astronomy, and gay sex for homosexual faggots, advanced poop procreation. However, NYU Yale HBC prides itself on offering less practical and more esoteric studies as well, okay? This is a realm of the mind, not just getting your degree, such as masturbation, anti-knowledge, and stream of consciousness poetry. Not many schools these days will allow you to get a doctorate in jerking it, but here you can do just that. The honor specials tend to convene in the Zoe Quinn dedication library with Ritalin 4 drips and LSD amphetamine blotters on every book page, using Microsoft Bing to find exactly what they need to find when they need to find it. When it's time to relax, they love just hanging out in the air vents or the cafeteria's walk-in freezer in the fetal position, thinking honor special thoughts. One second, people are emailing me about the YouTube thing being down. I got a fucking new post. Everyone, send email. Send an email to everyone. Boink. Okay. Sometimes these students slack off and party a bit too hard. There is certainly no shortage of cocaine and Molly-fueled omnisexual orgies accompanied by pulsing modest Yahoo music on campus, that's for sure. But for the most part, people keep their nose to the grindstone, snorting THC pills to stay focused, writing comments on RedTube and LobsterTube videos behind multi-layered Tor VPNs, a common skill-building assignment. In the main courtyard, a group of Skippies plays yiffy ball. Their sleek, tall, powerful green bodies easily slide in, out, and between each other in a primal dance of pure athleticism. Their bip-bop music is loud and distracting to the other students trying to concentrate, but tolerating the annoying and loud Skippies is a sign of virtue and, more importantly, sophistication. The Skippy bip-bop music is the most advanced and important music ever created throughout all of history. They hooted and hollered as the yiffy ball bounced around the court. Sure, it was true that their tremendous brains could comprehend math and physics problems beyond the reach of almost all other humans. But this didn't mean that they were corny like a bunch of boring crack-a-honkies, and they delighted in the simple pleasure of the bouncing ball. Skippy students all knew how to have a good time when they weren't solving the world's most advanced problems with hypermath, and partied up as well, always in a safe and respectful way. I should also mention that they are better lovers. While walking through the dorm halls, one would hear Skippy men respectfully shouting, "Consent!" And in response, higher-pitched voices of all races, in the throes of sexual ecstasy, crying, "Granted!" What a fucking asshole. I got an email from some kid who's trying to role play as a computer. He's pretending he's an artificial intelligence. Okay. In addition to the vibrant and hip Skippies, the courtyard was always abuzz with trend-setting subcultures and inventive extracurricular distractions, resplendent against the backdrop of stately and significant architecture. Massive gilded statues shaped like pizza spirals, generously donated by Yale alums John Kerry and George W. Bush, frame the austere exterior of the Skull and Bones fraternity house, where the future leaders of tomorrow can be found inside sharing handjobs and gay blackmail touches. Blackmail as in blackmail, not blackmail. There weren't, well, we'll get into that later. Footnote, while still active in 2070 and serving customers to the same high standard of quality enjoyed for over 200 years, the Skull and Bones Society is now a wholly owned subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company. Other great Walt Disney brands to keep an eye out for: the Branch Davidians, Antifa, Philip Morris Blood Diamond Corporation, and Ping Pong Pizza, Not a Child Porn Company, Incorporated. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more great Skull and Bones funspiracies. Not far from the S&B hut, careful not to tread too far into the occult order's turf, the HFT kids and the TensorFlow kids take a break from their strenuous pen and paper calculations and let off some steam with a spirited game of butt plug volleyball. Footnote, take a guess. Even the gender psionic majors were out in the sun, enjoying the splendiferousness and practicing new methods of anti-racist Tai Chi by the Julius and Ethel Rosenberg Bill Gates Vaccine Dedication Memorial 5G Gazebo. Footnote, interact! By the way, this book is interactive. So when I prompt you to interact, that's your cue to interact. Interactions are requisite, and they actually change the storyline. When you interact based on what I prompt you with, it changes the storyline. There's up to 20 different endings that you can. There's up to 50 different endings that you can achieve in this book. Interact! Look up who Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are, and then wonder, why are Hollywood types obsessed with eulogizing and posthumously exonerating two traitors who fed the Soviets information on the atomic bomb and arguably emboldened them to occupy North Korea, leading to a war which took the lives of 3 to 4 million people? And why is it that certain millions of lives matter, certain other millions of lives don't matter? Shouldn't all millions of lives matter? And over on the far east side, where the college filters out onto the Harry Potter King Jr. Street with its dozens of exciting Adderall bars and axe-throwing stalls, under the imposing, triumphal Mike Brown arch stood a cute and obviously charismatic couple. Perhaps a bit like you and your sweet gal. Perhaps the stars of our story? The girl, Kylese Slane, was a plump, plain-looking hate-white special. Plain-looking hate-white, that's her race, is hate-white. Special, she's a special. With beautiful cellulite-stippled walrus thighs, gorgeous bruised knock knees, plentiful cutter scars, and perfect uneven watery breasts. She stood about 5 feet 10 inches tall in chunky gothic heels that made all the boys stand at attention. Her face, which was caked in sticky foundation and exotic sexy cat effect eye paint, oscillated between primarily a twisted palsy sneer of entitlement, which she thought made her look like a genius, and an expression of mouth and eyes agog stupefaction that she would uncontrollably lapse into whenever she thought about celebrities. Her hair had seen some abuse, and between the bleachings, straightenings, dreadings, and undreadings, the end result looked like a heap of char-grilled spaghetti on her head. It wasn't a big deal, though. Kylese found that if she used lipstick to paint a target around her hindquarters, just so, she could fool most men's optical scanners into thinking her SMV was as high, if not higher, than it was before she put her hair through the Spanish Inquisition. Now, this hyper-focus on appearance was a bit hypocritical of Kylese, because she spent nearly as much time and energy railing against mass-market beauty standards and espousing a set of morally better ones, which more often than not simply authorized her to be extra nasty and vindictive in her dealings with prettier/younger girls. The onus for the collateral damage caused by this behavior, suicides, eating disorders, hospitalizations, crying fits, etc., falls solely upon heterosexual hate-white men, as it should. Kylese claimed to be gender blank and pan-lesbianic with a splash of queerch, although for some weird unknown reason she most frequently dated masculine cis men. Sure, it was a grand old time having a consensual romp or two with the Skippy Yiffy Ball team, but was it really fair to them to expect anything more serious? Could she ever really understand their story, their struggle? As happy as it made her to know that her father was going into debt so she could get railed, she knew that being a good person, not a perpetrator of systemic racism and cultural appropriation, meant using the Skippies like sex toys and nothing more. Whatever the rationale, at the end of the day, her heart always came back for the bologna. In Jaihu's case, the spicy chorizo bologna stir-fry. We'll get to that in a second. Like many hate-white girls with Asian boyfriends, she also had a touch of borderline personality disorder. And by a touch, I mean enough to power a casino if they had hydroelectric turbines for mental illness. Lastly, she was infinitesimally Cherokee, which she also had a degree in. The boy was Jaihu Cornunian. At 5'6", he was an impressive specimen for a Sporinx, footnote, Mexican identifying of Korean descent. I know a lot of people say stuff like this, but he had an aura about him, strangely aloof and apathetic. I mean, you could tell he just didn't give a fuck. He wasn't concerned with dressing in a manly way. In fact, most of his clothes were flowing black gothic ninja garments designed to enhance his androgyny. Underneath his neoprene Nike cloak, he wore a Huff V-neck which displayed the latest hot album covers on a paper-thin, flexible LED panel and occasionally bleated chiptune riffs in rhythm with his walking. Kylese was watching the elegant forms of the Skippy Yiffy ballers at play. She was stimulated by their tribal moves and unrestrained physical aggression. She felt a growing wetness through her antimicrobial Summer's Eve bug spray tights. In truth, she couldn't get stimulation from Jaihu. even though he was an activist who cared about lesser classes and complained very loudly and at the right times. He was perfectly femme-zoned, just the way Khaleesi claimed to want it. Yet she still needed that special something, and she had to get it from other men. Even though Jaihu sometimes felt bad because of it, the two were both happy on the whole, and it really was the perfect arrangement. Jaihu was able to get laid once a week by his best friend and soulmate, using their Boston Dynamics org-enhanced G, of course. And he knew that when Khaleesi was ready for children, or at least money, at her own pace, on her own time, she would come to him and no one else. And he would be there for her. He would be there for her. It was a true storybook romance. Time for the first class of the day. Jaihu kneeled down and kissed her goodbye on the bottom, and she gave him a tender, loving kick in the chastity cage. As he hoverboarded to Imaginary Studies 101, he looked up at the neon vomit-colored sky and thought, what pulses through our veins at the speed of love? Interact! Riddle edition! What pulses through our veins at the speed of love? Take 30 seconds to think of the answer. Dun 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 dun. Acceptable answers are socialism, grids, anti-Semitism. If you failed to guess an acceptable answer, interact right now by setting fire to this book. Footnote, don't worry, it's printed on magician's paper, aka nitrocellulose, such that it vanishes completely after being burnt. It won't leave a trace. New York University, Yale, Harvard, Baby College official motto, cum liberis fornicare non deprivatio sed consuetudo. Translation, plowing ahead with youth in hand, was one of the world's finest schools. And no surprise, Jaihu was one of the finest male students. His thirst for knowledge and lust for learning were unparalleled for a man. Of course, even a below-average woman would outpace him intellectually, but that was no fault of his. Imaginary Studies with Professor Levi Goldstein was easily his favorite subject. Goldstein was at the top of Z's field, and every class was an absolute pleasure. Jaihu would sit in the front row and imagine learning, closing his eyes to just think of all the things there were to study. While Goldstein stood at the podium and spewed nonsense in some sort of bastardized binaural Yiddish-Jamaican hybrid, a language proven to dramatically intensify one's belief that learning is taking place. Of course, Professor Goldstein, being a great practical joker, would also occasionally hum Gregorian chants and quote stock prices, while fondling himself raw through Z's khakis to test if anyone was paying attention. It was all in good-natured fun, for in Imaginary Studies, every student gets an A+. This class would surely preparate Jaihu for real life, he was told, and make him an eligible candidate for one of the 500 or so job openings that were available in the world. He had in mind one job in particular, an unpaid rat feces eater apprenticeship at Greenco Fuelwell Incorporated that he imagined would eventually blossom into a $1 million Dow token per year vice president job, where his job would be to get other people jobs and create more job openings based on governmental job reports. That is, if greedy Wall Street megacorps and science deniers would just get out of the way and let the jobifiers jobify. Being a job was his life's calling, or should I say, his life was his job's calling. And every minute spent in Imaginary Studies brought him closer to that dream. To be of use to a corporation, to increase their profits, cut expenses, and come up with great ad campaigns. It meant the world to Jaihu. Of course, between now and then, he'd have to prove himself as an apprentice and work his way up by rolling rat droppings into bigger, ping-pong ball-sized orbs and gulping them down whole. But once Greenco Fuelwell saw what a diligent and true employee Jaihu could be, they'd be sure to set him on the fast track to success. And he really liked Greenco Fieldwell in particular, because they had a reputation for giving their employees their penises and testicles back as soon as they reach middle management, as opposed to many other companies that hang on to the important stuff until the executive level. Jaihu's eyes were swimming with sweet visions of being a helpful lackey. Lackey! Heck, he'd let the CEO take a shit on his chest if it would make the company $1 extra in pre-tax profits. Boopy bop boopy bip. A few taps on the Apple Watch, and the Foxconn Lucid Dreamer 69K was remotely programmed to beam good corporate vibes into his head that night. It was a setting he often chose, for when the disembodied, big-nosed, purple-lipped face of his good pal and mentor, Professor Levi Goldstein, who was also a licensed Foxconn Lucid Dream avatar, sang gently in his ear, his sleep would become a free-floating bliss blast to a candy cloud. Ignore this. This is not happening. Stay in school and drink your milk. Don't do these. Don't do one of these. Ah! Oh! Oh! Oh, it's gonna ruin my night. Smell. Okay. All right. It couldn't all be fun and games. Today's next class, French fry mechanics, was a bit less exciting to say the least. This class gave Jaihu a really hard time, but it was important for his future, and so he dedicated a great deal of brainpower to thinking about how to make the perfect batch of crispy golden fries. The professor, Stephen Lebowitz, was a real stickler, and if one of Jaihu's fries was a dud, he'd have to restart the whole batch. There were maybe 2,000 students in the French Fry Mechanics Amphitheater, all situated around the central holographic projection of Professor Lebowitz. Each student had their own personal mini fryer, which was functionally identical to the real fryers they would be using throughout their careers. And likewise, each student was connected to their own personal facial recognition camera and genital electrode apparatus, which helped to ensure that all of the fries, hot fries, and griddle fresh beef patties were served up with a gleaming smile and a good attitude. This was the one class Jaihu couldn't seem to get the hang of, and he was in the bottom 25%. He had the scrotal burns to prove it, and in fact it was so stressful, he developed severe trichotillomania and TMJ, and became deeply sad and dejected, and very desperately needed help. But none of that mattered. He was going to have to practice a lot if he had any hope of getting an internship followed by a 10-year-long unpaid apprenticeship after college and his master's program was over. Interact! Think about crispy golden fries. First, the aroma, which entices you and lets you know amazing flavors are headed your way. Next, the heat and texture of the golden crispy fry between your fingertips, the direct connection to a spark of newborn fry life. Just a little greasy so you know it's good. Now open your mouth and accept the salt, dude. Slowly at first, the burst of taste exploding in your mouth, gushing one fry at a time. Now more and more until you're double-fisting big fried chunkalunks. Scarf it down! This message sponsored by McDonald's. My taste is yours. The bell rang, and a microwave pulse of reminder pain shot out from the school's underground scheduling cortex. Jaihu quickened his step along to the next class, Retail 101, which was even less exciting than French fry mechanics. But at least Jaihu was a competent retail technician, which meant he could relax a little. It was a large class with approximately 4,000 students, all corralled together in the big oxygen deprivation tents, which were made up on the inside to resemble real shopping safe zones. The thinner air helped the students perfect conservation of movement. In an actual retail environment, you see, every fold, flip, stitch, zip, brush of the lint roller, and swipe of the cred stick swiper was crucial. And even something as innocuous as excessive breathing could wind up costing the corporation and the government millions in profits and tax revenue. An added side benefit was that all the students learned firsthand the agony and injustice of the police brutality that is a reality for far too many Nemerakians. Jaihu couldn't breathe. Retail 101 was taught by Dr. Jacob Cohen, PhD, who was legendary not only across campus, but throughout the world of commerce, for inventing a special neck brace which maximized worker focus. The brace, the rights to which had been bought by Mahindra for God knows how much money and branded the My Worker Bee in Namarak and the My Sandeep in India, was a rather clever gizmo which used whistles, horns, LEDs, champagne confetti poppers, and needles to keep laborers zeroed in on mission-critical tasks such as making tortillas and stocking shelves. Of course, the horse blinders on the side were just for show, a special request from the Indian factory floor bosses, which didn't actually enhance the efficacy of the device. The real trick was making it affordable at scale, which Cohen achieved by using an Arduino LilyPad to coordinate the various sensors, with everything powered by 3 AAA batteries conveniently stored in the wearer's ass. The cherry on the sundae? An ingenious set of mechanical gears positioned on the back of the neck brace, which would cleverly snap the worker's cervical spine like a number 2 pencil, should he or she be so unwise as to fall asleep while on the clock. The Mahindra My Worker Bee proved so effective that it is considered essential equipment in the menial labor industry. Cohen was a genius, and NYU Yale HBC was lucky that this double-digit millionaire investor and retail scientist felt so strongly about educating today's future salespeople and assembly line workers that he'd do it essentially almost for free, or very close to free. Jaihu sighed. He knew his Retail 101 homework was helping out the global economy and also directly subsidizing the university, but the tedium weighed on him. Some days the students would learn how to sew together soccer balls, sewing up 200 balls apiece in a given 4-hour period. Other times they would fold t-shirts and put them in plastic bags. The t-shirts had cool logos and sayings on them. The t-shirts had cool logos and sayings on them. Stuff like peace and Che Guevara in dynamic graffiti lettering. He couldn't afford to buy a shirt like that himself, but he imagined that they probably got shipped out to cool people with good taste. People with interesting and sexy depops. It wasn't exciting work, but Jaihu was willing to practice and study hard to make himself a valuable commodity in the scarce job market that awaited him. 1 second. Y'all. Just gotta check my stocks. Let me check my stocks. And I'm broke. And I'm broke. And I've made a foolish decision with my money. And I've made a foolish decision with the only money I'll ever have. All right. Jaihu obediently packed an I care about others distressed V-neck into a Uline BPA pure bag. Footnote, pure BPA. It is pure BPA. And sent it down the conveyor belt. Although Professor Cohen was seemingly distracted, playing Zynga on his phone and mowing down a bagel with nootropic lox schmear, you never knew what the old man could catch out of the corner of his eye. Jaihu knew that if he didn't pack the t-shirts with total loving care, there would be hell to pay. Maybe even a lawsuit. He had already been sued by Cohen 3 times this semester. He reached for the next shirt, but then there was a loud, crashing boom-bang sound in the hall. The Skippy bip-bop music thumping through the walls to a present-day person would seem vulgar and mindless, and would seem like culture-killing anti-music created by dangerous subhuman retards. But in 2.5 years hence, things are so advanced and therefore counterintuitive that even your lowest-tier country bumpkin redneck hate white has to admit that bip-bop exists in the same hallowed artistic realm of the finest classical music, and perhaps even a bit higher. It is astounding how much meaning can be conveyed through just 3 monosyllables. It is this ancient and time-honored 3-word structure, invented untold generations ago in the Skippy homelands of Atlantis, that gives bip-bop music its form and perhaps some of its primal power. For example, 800 Shibby's hit song, Rape Dat Bitch, is just a chant repeated over and over again for 7 minutes. Rape that bitch! Rape that bitch! Rape that bitch! And so on. Jaihu fondled an unfolded shirt, listening to the hypnotic dirge of raw, healthy, hypermasculine energy. Rape that bitch! Rape that bitch! He thought of Khaleesi and her many lovers, all of them consensual as hell. Knowing he could never please a woman like a powerful and wise Skippy could, even with his Boston Dynamics organ-enhanced G and 50W200 Bose-Einstein condensate KY nanolube. For a split second, a proto-thought of ancient ethnic hatred was allowed to bubble up from his amygdala. Had this proto-thought been allowed to cascade, he would have seen a vision, a horse-mounted Mongol archer, or rather, a horde of archers, with fine fur hats and dyed silk robes, chasing down strange-looking Atlantean beasts, whose nakedness was only concealed by stinking coiled hair and matted straw skirts. The beasts ran like scared children, their gait disrupted by spasms of primal fear, as bamboo arrows sang through the air and called their numbers. Jaihu's Neuralink contact lens video screen, which was connected to the Calm app on his phone, flashed a red and yellow Ravello reset pattern, and he lost his train of thought before it could start. Shirts. Time to bag and fold these bad boys. End of chapter 1. All right, I'll do one more chapter. Let me see what is fun. This book is so fried because the whole thing is like packed with that shit. So after you get through 1/3 of it, it's just like it becomes very like textural and abstract. It's like psychic driving or something like that. Like the words don't even matter anymore. And dude, when I wrote this, I wrote like, there's like 2 or 3 points. There's like 2 or 3 points where I started down some really, this is written by me and John Pellick and a couple other people, by the way. But there were a bunch of points where I started down some really important path where I was like, yeah, I'll just conclude this later. And then later on, I forgot to tie it off or to make it come back to the main, the A-line plot. So there's parts in the book later on where it's like, you might be wondering what happened with the big race. Turns out Jaihu won it all, like wrapping it up in one sentence. Let me see if I can find that. What would I search for to get to that point? Fuck it. All right. Let's do chapter 3. Chapter 3. Last chance for love. Wait, is that the... No, that's not the one I want. Ultimate Woman, blah, blah, blah. Legendary Rival. Ernie Flanders. Hey. All in, The audiobook turned out good, which I was worried about. Okay. So now this is the part where he's having a he's got to win the love and affection of Khaleesi through by being victorious in a drift battle. Chapter 6. Superstars of the Earth. And he's been arrested at this point, and the arresting officer's name is Officer. I'm just thinking. Hold on a second. The name of the arresting officer is Officer. So that's where we're starting here. Officer drifted him back. And he's being released. Oh, we got 17 seconds remaining before we have to start a new one? What the fuck? Why would they do that? Come on. Come on. 7 seconds. 6 seconds before it goes away. 3 seconds till I have to go bye-bye? Oi. Yeah. Fuck. Don't watch this. Okay, you can look again. You keep looking now. For Christmas morning breakfast, I had Greek yogurt. And for dinner, I'll have a Cliff Bar. How about you? How are you guys doing? All right, so he's been released from prison. An officer is now driving him back to make it in time for the drift race. Officer drifted him back to the NYU Yale HBC main campus with little time to spare. Along the way, he explained to Jaihu that his lifelong ambition was to himself be a legendary drift racer. But he became a cop instead because of a rare medical condition that prevented him from drifting on left-hand corners. Funny, Jaihu didn't even notice the entire time that whenever there was a left turn, Officer actually did a 270-degree right turn. He was just that good. Also, he hadn't entirely been truthful during their first encounter. His real name wasn't Officer. It was Savior. And while he truly was one of the heroes, he wasn't limited edition Safe T rank. He was actually legendary rank, which meant that his reports bypassed the entire chain of command, including the president, and went directly to the master of the world. He also told Jaihu an incredible personal story of loss, injustice, perseverance, and triumph, which Jaihu swore to never repeat and would take too long to explain in any event. This intimate sharing led to a newly formed, profound brotherly connection, the strength of which rivaled any bond, real or fictional, in all of history and or literature. Jaihu, with tears in his eyes, promised that he would drive his best in his college's drift tournament, and if he won, he'd dedicate the victory to Savior. The school's parking garage had been transformed into a thumpin' rave party. Candy-coated heaven dwellers rollerbladed through anesthetic fog machine clouds and did backflips off trampolines into foam pits, cyber laughing. Insane-looking Asian yacht girls with tight bodies did cigarette dances, popping balloons with lusty heel stomps, giving lap dances to imaginary men, ARG men, their eyes imperceptibly sex-smiling through neoprene burqas. Jaihu could barely hear himself think over the clashing crime-core and fetal electro-rock beats. Nearly 100 cars were lined up, most of them just for show. There were stretched and slammed oddities as far as the eye could see, rare Nissans revving through straight pipes, underglow-pimped Renault and Seat hatchbacks, sport bikes and four-wheelers. Teachers and students alike, almost half the student body in total, came to see the spectacle and watch the showdown. He was sure Kailisi was busy in the lab with vital science research. Fuck? Vital science research. But Jaihu's eyes scanned the crowd for her anyway. He saw Guatemalan two-spirit aluminum twinks in cop hats, bubblegum retro-tech spice brats with 24/7 cam horse selfie sticks, crypto princes arguing with Croaky's frat busters over who had the right to rock vineyard vines. But no Kailisi. Over by a stink pipe, a group of salvage denim, prisoner pants, rockabilly, chopped chicken Japs were staring at him and laughing while making obscene hand gestures. Oh, come kill Malcolm, fuck you, Joe, fuck you, Cotton Eye Joe, Yankee. Jaihu heard someone hawk a third world style loogie behind him and spun around to see none other than Trang Dum Goon, the Vietnamese drift racer, standing there in white linen capri pants, nail salon flip-flops, a green casino eye shade, and faded yellow polyester shirt. On the shirt was a cartoon panda and the words, "Flock because do lifestyle." Lo wakta one day, Goon said with a smirk. Jaihu had no idea that this was a very clever and serious insult in Goon's native language, and that he had just been pwned. Puzzling. Jaihu knew the Vietnamese language was filled with intricacies and subtle sophistications, much more so than English. But right now it just hurt his ears and felt like a verbal sewer pie, like retarded fish head pinball machine pigeon chatter from people who took 3,000 years to invent the hut. He really wanted to just punch the gook right in the fucking mouth. But he knew that was wrong. You know, I never understood how you can go to school here and not speak English. Goon hawked another loogie, full of bugs and cigarette butts, this time right at Jaihu's feet. It was the most culturally beautiful thing that had ever existed, well beyond our ability to understand. Shit to yum for bang bang, only yum yum, the cocky racer gloated. Yeah, man, whatever. See you on the track, buddy. Jaihu put up a hand for Trang Dum Goon to talk to. The thrumming techno spywave music combined with the stench of hero meat and the body heat of the mindless revelers was starting to give him a headache. He hoped to God the race would start soon. He wouldn't have to wait long. Jaihu pulled up to the starting line in his Toyota Corolla A&F 92, a car known to street racers as the Hachiroku. Japanese for hatchback raw, as in a hatchback with raw, awesome power. It was a pretty commonplace machine, In fact, this one used to serve as his father's sushi delivery shop car. The Hasselgren Formula Atlantic V4 was nothing to write home about, but the vehicle's lightweight and front-wheel drive tech meant that Jaihu could use his skill to keep up with the best of them, especially on the downhill, where cornering ability trumps outright power. The Hachiroki was an ordinary ride all right, with one weird trick up its sleeve. This car was equipped with a cold air exhaust, a rare carbon fiber part developed in tandem by New Speed and Valeside. This device enabled Jaihu to spray a fine mist of super chilled, cold exhaust particles at anyone who happened to be following him too closely. He would never use it in a fair battle, but some part of him secretly hoped one or more of his legendary rivals would break out the dirty tactics, so he could give them a taste of the ice. The stage was set. To his left, Professor Joyce Nussbaum was revving the tits off her 2JZ. Her eyes, two little rock-hard beads of communistic man-hatred, fixed on the apex of the first corner. To his right, Coolie D, the Skippy drift racer, bopping his head casually, listening to insipid Skippy bit-bop. Right, that bitch! Right, that bitch! Through both his oversized headphones and the car's built-in audio system. Finally, there was Trang Dum Goon, who was sucking a toothpick, probably thinking about eating a nice pile of snake guts for dinner with a side of blood. A smoking hot Asian geisha with free will blocking 8G yarmulke clambered over to the front, rolling its ankles several times in chunky 8-inch synth leather heels. It was unable to walk properly, or see for that matter, as its vision was obstructed by a Fendi kitty ears burqa, and its feet were bound by the finest and most luxurious designer basketball shoe foot wraps available on the market, the Jig Jig Ace 5s. The icing on the cake was the caution tape fishnet body stocking, which the geisha's CIA handler, Rachel C., thought was sexy, or at least thought that certain powerful men would think is sexy, men who would make a nice addition to Israel's Rolodex of snitches. She was right. It, the brain-bleached Asian, had the tightest little biling fleshlight body, and it was safe to say that not a single masculine identifying identity in the crowd thought of it as anything more than a barely cognizant walking sex toy, which was accurate. Jaihu made a mental note to remember that Chinese people are subhuman. Geisha raised the green flag, and the crowd fell silent. Professor Joyce Nussbaum, competitor number 1, revved hard and clenched the steering wheel with spidery, white-knuckled George Soros fists. Trang Dum Goon shouted clattering monosyllables like a short-order cook at a Chinese dumpling joint and got ready to unleash the full power of his Honda tuk-tuk. Coolie D laughed idly and leaned his seat back further, chinky-eyed but concentrating to the best of his abilities. Jaihu had tunnel syndrome, tunnel vision. Showtime. The soulless sex kitty let the flag drop. Instantly, the garage filled with tire smoke and an explosion of noise. Professor Joyce Nussbaum dumped the clutch and rocketed off the line. Trang Dum Goon was right on her tail, but Jaihu lagged behind. His Hachiroki didn't have the power to keep up. If he were to have a chance, he'd have to win this race in the corners and braking zones. The three zoomed off into the distance. Coolie D hit the gas, but he'd forgotten to shift the car out of neutral. Right, that bitch! Right, that bitch! Ah, shit. I ain't even know what I'm gonna do about that. Ain't about a thing. The lethargic Skippy gave the upshift paddle a tap, but something was wrong. The electrical impulses from the maxed out stereo system played hell with the delicate inner workings of the gearbox. The car was just too overloaded with horsepower and hi-fi audio. It lurched forward suddenly, jerking from side to side with an ungodly grinding sound. The crowd could see what was about to happen. Even if Cooley D hadn't been fated AF, there was no way he could reel those 1,001 horses back under control now. Like a 2-ton, 4-legged monster, the Bugatti surged forward toward the geisha race queen, accelerating from 0 to who knows how fast in the blink of an eye. By the time her central nervous system instructed her body to flinch, her shins were already snapped in two, and just a moment later, she was being sucked under the car as if by a giant vacuum cleaner. Her body came ragdolling out the other side, looking a bit the worse for wear, to say the least. Cooley D's giant green lips quaked from the G-force as he watched his tachometer climb higher into the red zone. Right, that bitch! The combined signal from the headphones and the CD player fried the inside of the car's amplifier like a chicken nugget, which then inadvertently sent a quote-unquote death signal to the engine, all in a matter of milliseconds. As the crowd watched in frozen horror, the carbon fiber lid of the Bugatti's engine bay shot straight up into the ceiling, accompanied by all 12 cylinders and a humongous fireball. The rear wheels snapped their lug nuts free and blasted off to either side like hockey pucks, and the rest of the flaming toboggan torpedoed into the cement wall at an enormous speed. Cooley D, trapped inside by blazing luxurious leather, was incinerated. Bystanders would later recall that his dead body looked like a spicy Cheeto. Professor Nussbaum and Trangdum Goon were too far ahead to have seen the carnage, but Jaihu watched the whole thing unfold in his rearview mirror. He'd say a prayer later. There was no time crying over spilled Skippy now. Cooley D had sent himself down the Nile, and all that mattered now was La Raza. Translation, the drift race. Jaihu floored it, and the Hasselgren V4 screamed higher and higher, well into VTech territory, almost blasting through WTech into the XTech zone. His veins were pulsing hot, and the car was running rich. The smell of solar gasoline, sweaty partiers, burning tires, and belchy chewing tobacco from the chopped chicken Japs formed a potent amalgam that was like nothing else. Oh, it was the smell of ultimate drift racing. And to Jaihu, it was everything. Something about watching Cooley D die made him feel especially lucid. The Effexor SSR behavioral modification nanobots in his system were working overtime to reel in the chaos, but he was just too triggered. Like in a horde mode or tower defense flash game that had gone haywire, his adrenal glands were doing double duty to provide the testosterone that his testicles never could. He gripped the personal Neo Grinta suede steering wheel and did a Scandinavian flick into the next hairpin, laughing at death. Death heard Jaihu's call and answered back with a red ring. There was something slick on the road, and he'd overcommitted to his drift. It was some type of sinister slime, not dark enough to be oil, sitting right there on his cornering line, almost as though someone had planted it there. He tried to feather the gas to change his drift angle, but it was too late. The outside back tire hit the goo and sent his Hachiroki drift race car flying into a Christ air. Time slowed to a near standstill, and Jaihu tried everything, pulling the e-brake, honking the horn, to no avail. This is it. The car slammed down onto solid concrete, blowing out the top-secret super coilovers, made by Aragosta, but custom valve to Smoky specifications, and shattering every pane of glass in his car. Expecting the worst, Jaihu opened his eyes and assessed the damage. Could it really be? He'd landed in the right direction and was still pushing 300 kph. The acrobatics hadn't slowed him down. In fact, he was going faster. Was it possible that his skills had grown so much? Had he really come to surpass his online mentor / groomer, Takumi Faust, the world champion drift king? Up ahead, Professor Nussbaum was setting the pace. extracting every ounce of performance from the Supra. She was unbelievably fast, but somehow Trang Dum Goon was hanging in there, not far behind. The Subaru 1235 stuffed in the Honda tuk-tuk was a mighty power plant, capable of negging most competition, but it was notorious for burning oil. And soon enough, Goon was trailed by a big blue-gray cloud. The two were locked in a fierce battle for the lead. Instead of doing the smart thing and taking turns drafting until the last leg, they vied for position like pit bulls at every corner, entry, and exit, fricasseeing their tires in the process. Narcissism is the Achilles heel of many racers, and their egos prevented them from driving intelligently. It was what Jaihu had been counting on. Oh yeah. He used dirt drops, clutch kicks, and 180-degree jump drifts to close the gap, while at the same time earning massive kudos and achievements from the crowd. A notification vibration from his Bluetooth Razzo shift knob alerted him that someone in the crowd had tipped at least 25,000 The Dow tokens to his Patreon. Soon enough, he was on their tails, flashing his high beams to put the pressure on. The little Hachiroki was on the absolute limit, with the brakes fading and the oil temperature rising fast, but they were entering the downhill section of the parking garage now, and that was Jaihu's turf. With its technical S-turns and back-to-back hairpins, his lightweight car would have the advantage over the body-positive Supra and the twitchy, overpowered tuk-tuk. Suddenly, a stream of mysterious ooze left a chemtrail of hazard streaks in front of Jaihu. The road was slippery with thick plasmic runoff. He was able to turn left, then right to avoid it, but the call was a close one nonetheless. It was some kind of spray from Professor Nussbaum's car. Soon all three racers were neck and neck. The professor panicked. She'd never been macro-aggressed like this before, never been drift-shamed by a quasi-Caucasoid in an underpowered economy car. She could not afford to cede the crown of matriarchal progress to this lowly binary specimen. Unbeknownst to Jaihu, Professor Nussbaum had one weird trick up her sleeve. Over the course of many sex changes and biological mutations, she developed within herself a Cronenberg-like coping mechanism designed specifically for situations of intense societal pressure. She chomped down hard on her lower biscuit lip, cosmetically enhanced with carpet sealant, and wrapped herself in the stomach with a closed fist a few times, becoming her own whipping boy. By elevating her stress levels and inducing an exaggerated chemical trigger reaction, she could channel the extremist emotions into a volatile alchemy. This fully energized the lining of her synthetic uterus, causing her Bucci juice to oxidize and heat up to near molten levels. Jaihu was about to fall right into her trap. No pun intended. As the racers passed the apex and prepared for the chicane, Professor Nussbaum secreted her built-up ectomenstrual discharge into an empty Gatorade Frost bottle. She was cackling like a madwoman now. Even though the expensive Alcantara interior of her car was soaked with pulpy piss, for she now held a Gatorade bottle full of glowing synthetic period chowder, the only ingredient necessary for a deadly road hazard. She reached her hairy ham-bone steak of a man-arm out the driver's side window, and with a bloated squawk, dumped toxic vaginal discharge, slicker than black ice, all over the road. There was nothing he could do. Jaihu saw the spugium, but he was already utilizing all of his available grip just to hang on. Braking now would lock up the front wheels and send him careening into the guardrail. His only option was to ride it out. Last season, he'd ran a set of Advan AO48s, which were immune to vaginal discharge. But in order to save money this season, he'd gone with the plain old General Grabbers, which were not. He hit the goo and instantly flipped into the air, this time with no hope of a clean landing. The crowd was in shock watching Jaihu's Hachiroki tumble end over end through the air, like a bisexual who couldn't figure out what kind of sex he wanted. And Jaihu didn't know if he was sucking or rimming at this point, but either way, he was fucked. Finally, he crashed, and hard. Jaihu was not a doctor, but it was immediately clear that his life had been ruined. His legs looked like hamburger meat, and the A-pillar was sticking through his neck. If he lived, he would never drift again. Jaihu passed out before he could reach for the cold air exhaust button, succumbing to critical injuries. All right, so that's the end of chapter 6. This is 300 pages. This is 20. We filled out 25 or 24, 23 chapters of this. Thank you guys I hope everybody's doing good with the Christmas situation. I will be getting some Chinese dumplings and being extremely grateful for all the great people I know. And I'll be buying stocks. I'll be trading. I'll be thinking about what trades I'm going to make, what good ideas I'm going to have next. And I hope you are doing something good too. Put your phone away, okay? When we part ways here, put the fucking phone away. That's all. I'm going to make a code right now for Gumroad for if you guys want to buy this book. $22 is a lot of money for an ebook. You also get the audiobook too, and there's going to be a sound effects version. The reason it's $22 is because I spent a fuckload of time on this. This is like years of work. But I'll make a code right now. Man, the Gumroad website is kind of slow, so this is going to take a minute. What price should we make it? What's the Christmas price? I will make some codes. Do not share this. If you share this, it's going to be gone. I'll make a limited amount, a limited number of codes for, let's just do $12. Go buy it for $12. Don't get pissed. People who paid full price. No, it's $12. I could have saved $10. Just every business does sales. Just fucking go complain to Steam about something. All right, this is gonna take me fucking 10 minutes to make, but if you want to pay $12 and get Jaihu, let's make the code. Guys, the future. Blah, blah, blah. What's a Merry Christmas time code that we can use? What's a seasonal code? Add discount code. We will do this for amount off, $10 off. So it's $12. That's good. And we will set a limited quantity. So don't share the link. Don't share this code. This is only for live stream viewers, for the real schmiggas. And we'll make this I'll just go with the default code here. I can't think of anything clever. So we'll use what Gumroad has by default. This is 54MFGA, all lowercase. See it? 54 lowercase MFGA, and there's a limited quantity. Don't share the thingy. And we're gonna save changes. All right. So if you go put that in, if you go buy that, you should get it for cheap. Get it for cheap. And I'm gonna shut this off. I'm gonna get rid of this code at the end of tonight. So go do it now if you're gonna do it. That's it. The people that saw my latest Instagram post about the next 5 years with sort of dystopian predictions, I don't think that's all the stuff that's going on. My continuing hypothesis is that you should just focus on making your own life as good as possible, and what that good means. You know, there's other people you can turn to for that. Go look at Carnivore Aurelius or Sadwater, Josh Lacash, Elliot Hulse. Go read some books, whatever you got to do. But I wouldn't stress out about any of the any of the, you gotta have a sense of humor about it. What do they call it? The Great Reset? The Great Reset. You won't own anything and you'll like it. I'll own a gun. Tell you that much. Okay. Bye, guys. Merry Christmas. Love y'all.